On this video, let's talk about 3 things you need to be looking for to catch more fish during the wintertime. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today on this video, as I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about 3 things that you can visually see or visually look for that is going to help you catch more fish during the wintertime. These are 3 things that very consistently every single year I can look for without electronics, without mapping and all that stuff, and catch a lot more fish. And so let's go ahead and, without further ado, dive right into it. So got some notes here on my computer. The first thing, and we'll actually need the computer. Let's move over to mapping real quick. I know we said we don't need the mapping, but I want to use it as a visual aid here. So one of the things that I'm always looking for this time of year is where the fish, including the bait fish, have funneled out of shallow areas that they were in during the fall. So during the fall, we see a huge shad migration into the backs of creeks where the bass feed up on those shad for a long period of time, and a lot of times it's in real shallow water, like just a couple feet a lot of times. And then on a lot of lakes, the lake starts to drop. They'll drop it down to winter pool. Pretty much all the lakes around here drop down for winter pool for flood control during the wet season. And those fish have to leave those shallow areas, and you have dropping temperatures, so they already want to leave those shallow areas anyways, because they want to be in the deeper, more stable temperature water. And so they'll pull out to these deep water areas. And one of my favorite scenarios to see is what I call basins in these creek areas. So what we've got here, I'll just show you instead of doing the good old, screen record. So what we've got here is a pretty prominent creek on Lake Chickamauga. This is Sail Creek, and this is pretty popular area, but back when the fish were up shallow, feeding on shad in the fall, they were back here in this real shallow area. You can see with the relief shading, the more red it is, the shallower it is, and we're talking about just a few feet. Right now it's like a couple feet only in the deeper areas. But then you look over here, there's another basin that is a more orangey and yellow shade. That means deeper water here on this particular map. And this basin right here, this deeper water basin next to or outside of a shallow water fall area is where I like to focus my efforts. So what I call a deep water basin, you can find in a lot of different places on many lakes. It's essentially just a wide area where the fish have kind of drained out into when they drop the water, and when the water starts getting cold. That's kind of a holding place before those schools of shad and the bass make their way out to the main lake. So they hold in this location during the wintertime for quite a while. In some cases, right now in December, they'll be there. And then January, they'll probably still be there for a little bit. And then they'll finally filter out into the main lake, or at least a lot of them will. And a lot of them will just stay in these what I call basins for the entire wintertime, because they've got plenty of depth. They've got plenty of bait fish that are still remaining there. And it's just a good area for them to hang out. So that is one of the things that I look for this time of year, is a large, somewhat deep water basin area where bait fish are holding and bass are feeding on those bait fish. So that is the type of spot that you want to look for this time of year. You can find it on pretty much any lake. Very popular type of location on Lake Chickamauga. Some other examples would be like Dallas Bay, so like near Chester Frost and things like that. Or you've got, out in front of like the Wolf Teaver area and stuff like that, Harrison Bay. So yeah, that is something that I look for, is those deep water holding areas outside of the fall, locations. So that is the first thing. All right, everybody, so I just want to interrupt this video real quick for a cause that I hold near and dear to my heart that I think is super important, way more important than fishing. So hang in there with me real quick. Essentially, you know, December is a time period of holiday season. You know, you've got Christmas right around the corner. You're spending time with friends and family. For many people, it's the best time of the year. But I want to recognize that right now, as everybody's having a great time, there are people that are going through the toughest times of their life at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, trying to beat childhood cancer. And St. Jude is just an absolute godsend. We went through the experience last year. My daughter got diagnosed with a neuroblastoma cancer at 10 months old. And now, thanks to St. Jude, she is cancer-free and we're living a normal life with lots of hope. There's a quote on the halls of St. Jude that really spoke to me from the founder of St. Jude, Danny Thomas, that says, "I'd rather get $1 from 1,000,000 people than get $1 million from one person." And to me, that means that awareness and banding together for a common cause is more important than just the money. And that's what I want to focus on this December. For this December, instead of asking you just to open-ended donate to the fundraiser that we've got, I want to call on you guys to every single person that I can, donate $5, just $5. If everybody just donates $5 to St. Jude, that is a small donation per person, but a huge impact for hundreds of families that are going through the hardest experience of their lives. So if you're interested, which I hope you are, go check out the link in the description below for my St. Jude fundraiser. Every penny goes to St. Jude, and every penny goes to beating childhood cancer. Thank you guys. Let's get back to fishing. The next thing that I look for, let's pull my notes back up here, is bird activity. And this is usually a way to pinpoint where the fish are in these basin areas. So birds are super important during the wintertime. You don't really, I really don't see as much, you know, useful bird activity other times of the year. In a lot of situations, there are times, especially if I go up north, that during the summertime, I will look for birds. But during the wintertime, December, January, super important. I look for gull activity specifically. You know, if I see them flying around and darting down, that is a good sign because they're helping me find the location where the bait fish are at least at. And usually you find the bait fish, you find the bass too. So I look for gulls, and I also look for other fish-eating birds such as loons. Loons are a really good one. I've had a lot of success following loons around and catching fish, especially if they're actively diving and feeding. You got to be careful because sometimes, you know, birds like cormorants, if you see like a big giant flock of cormorants, you know, moving along, that may not be an indication that they're actively feeding. But if you see just a few and they're constantly diving down, the same thing with gulls. If they're just flying around, that's not necessarily an indication that they're actively feeding. They may just be kind of looking around. But if they're diving down and hitting the water and stuff like that, that is what I'm looking for. That's the type of bird activity I'm looking for. And so in general, man, I'm telling you, you go to some of these deep water holding areas, these big basins, and look for birds, that's going to help you find a location where there's bass faster than anything. So now you might ask, what about like, you know, egrets and things like that? I don't really pay attention to the shoreline birds, you know, fish-eating birds as much this time of year. It may be more of like a spring thing for me, or even during the summertime. But during the wintertime, I'm primarily looking for those fish-eating birds that are offshore a little bit more. Just kind of my observation over the years. All right, and the last thing, and obviously there's more things to look for during the wintertime, so I don't want to like oversimplify it, but I also don't want to overcomplicate it either. The last thing I look for is remaining grass. You know, if you find grass during January and February, it's generally going to have some bass around it probably. You know, Lake Chickamauga, that's definitely true because there's not a lot of grass that's left. during January and February, because a lot of the grass that was healthy was in the shallow part of the lake where, you know, it's high and dry right now due to them dropping the water level. And then the rest of the grass just slowly dies, you know, as it gets really, really cold. So if you do find some healthy grass that that remains green, you can catch a ton of fish out of it. In fact, a great story that kind of illustrates this point was I fished a tour event down at the Harris Chain in Florida. Did really good, got a top 10 there. Came back up to Chick, and we had a Toyota Series event, and I went into it with no practice at all and had this one area that had just a little bit of hydrilla remaining in this little kind of depression on this shallow flat. It was only like 3 foot of water, but it still had grass. I ended up leading the tournament the first day out of that area, caught a ton of great big fish. The second day, you know, it was quite a bit slower. Actually had a buddy of mine that didn't know I was fishing there. He was there already fishing. He caught a big one. He said he caught an 8-pounder. And so there was, you know, some other pressure in the area. But overall, it was that spot, because of that last remaining grass, that allowed me to do really well in that tournament. I didn't win it, but I had a good finish and got a check. So anyways, guys, these are just some things that I look for personally that help me catch more fish during the wintertime, and I want to hear about your key indicators during the wintertime too. So if you have anything that you look for, drop that comment down below. I'd love to see that. And other than that, if you guys have any topics you want me to cover, drop a comment below. And also, check out the link for the St. Jude fundraiser. It's December. Let's all donate $5 to benefit the end of childhood cancer. I think everybody can get behind that. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to see you out in the water. Make sure you trust the process.